Now we're going to take a look at how to add a delay in our abilities and make an ability that does a slow timed bomb like that, kind of like Karthus' ability in League of Legends. Now I'm going to do it again. Watch the health on the second character back there. Here, let's get them all side by side, and I'll hit the bomb, and it goes off, and you can see that as it hits, the character takes some damage, and we're going to take a look at exactly how that's all done and why my character here isn't taking any damage from it as well. It's also worth noting this ability works if I do it directly on an enemy or on the ground. It hits either way. Now to make this ability work, there's one key thing we need to hook up, which is the delay. Well, actually there are two because there's also an AOE, but let's look at the delay first. I'm going to hit Shift F12 and find all references on the delay. And you'll see here that in our abilities code, it will go down. There we go, just found it. We now have an activate ability async. So let's take a look at what's going on here and how things have changed. Up above, we had a try use ability, and this used to return back a task or an IEnumerator, I forget which, but I've now changed it to just have a void return type and do all of the checks that we need initially before worrying about anything asynchronous. So the calls to try use ability are the same. We just call try use ability, and then it'll look to see if we have an ability ready, or if the ability is ready, checking that cooldown again. It'll check to make sure that we can pay the cost, and then it'll set our cooldown, assuming that all of those conditions were met. And then finally, it'll start a coroutine to activate our ability asynchronously. This now loops over all of our effects, just like it did before, but instead of doing it in a synchronous manner where every effect was applied instantly, we're now yielding and doing a yield return on our effect.apply. And then we're also right before that waiting for whatever our delay is. So this is the part that's really added, and it's made possible by making this all asynchronous. But again, the only part that needs to be async is the actual activation. All of the checks don't need to be in that async part and really shouldn't be, in my opinion. If you have cost checks and ability checks all going off asynchronously with timing, I feel like you're much more likely to run into issues and problems. So I generally avoid it and wait until just the last part that's actually needing some timing to make that part asynchronous. Now let's go back into the editor and check out the delayed bomb ability that I was just using. You see here that at the beginning we've got a new ability spawn ability effect spawn particle. Whoa, that was a tough one to say. We got ability effect spawn particle with 0 delay. This is going to spawn a particle instantly, and the one that I'm using is this red energy explosion. It's from Hovel Studios free magic effects pack. I'll make sure to link it. You can just go grab it and pull that in, or use whatever you want. But I really liked this one because it was this nice timed explosion drop. It did exactly the type of effect that I was looking for. The second effect down here, though, actually has a delay. It's got a delay of 1 second. That's why when I'm doing the damage, it's not happening until the particle is actually landing. It's right at that same time. So we show the particles, then we wait about 1 second, well, exactly 1 second, and then deal damage. And here I'm dealing damage using a magic damage stat. This is just a new stat that I've created and added to the game. Make sure that you add it into the prefabs manager if you add this stat, or create whatever stats you want to use. But I felt like since this was a magic ability, I'd move away from the melee damage one and create a new magic stat for it. I didn't want to make it too complicated though, so there's no new defending stats, but we do have 3 new fields down here. There's an AOE range, an AOE layer mask, and an option for AOE exclude self. The range is going to be how far away in meters we'll target other things. So if we click on an NPC or another character, it's going to be 5 meters away from that character, including that character. If we click on a ground position, it'll be 5 meters from that ground position. The layer mask is just using our physics layers, and right now I've got it on everything, but if we have a character layer, we can move that over there. And the exclude self option you're going to see in a moment allows us to exclude the caster or the owner of the ability, so we can do an AOE that doesn't necessarily have to damage ourselves. Now, to make this possible, the core changes are really in this ability effect damage. We have the same damage stats and defending stats that we had before, the same max base damage and minimum base damage, although the serialized field layout got a little bit weird there. But here we've got the three new fields: AOE range, the mask, and the exclude self. And then on 21, we have an array of colliders, which we use for the results, because right down below here on 34, you'll see that we're using an overlap sphere non-alloc, and we want to not create a new array or a new collection of those colliders every time we want to do an overlap sphere or check for other colliders in range. Our apply method has changed a little bit. Now we create a list of targets, and really this could probably be a list of targets. It's just up here and then cleared instead of instantiated as I think about optimizations. And then we check to see if the target that we passed in from our ability target, which remember takes a location or a character and gets serialized over the network, if that target has a character, then we'll add that character to our target. So this is if we click and try to use it on a specific character. Next, we check to see if the AOE range is greater than 0. If it is, then we'll consider it an AOE, and we'll figure out the origin that we want to use as either the character that we clicked on. If the character is not null, we use that character's position right here. Otherwise, we use the ground position that we've passed in. So we're going to either pass in a character or a ground. It's going to be one of the two. If we don't have a character, we'll use that ground location. And that's, again, when we click on the client and pass that in through the message, it gets passed in long before this part. Next, we've got the overlap sphere where we check to see what colliders are in range using that layer mask. And here we're checking against everything. We're going to get the ground and other things, but we could filter this out later. We loop through the number of hits because this call gives us the number of things that we hit and then puts them into the AOE results array that we created earlier. Next, we get a character from the hit, and hopefully there's a character there. If not, it's fine though, because we'll just continue on. On line 41, if there's no character, we don't damage the character. But also before that, on line 38, if we have the AOE exclude self on and the thing that we hit is the actual owner, so this character that we hit with the collider is the owner of it and we don't want to hit ourselves, then we just continue on line 39. And then again on 41, if we have a character, we call into 42's damage character, which is just an extracted version of what we had before, which was a kind of our old apply, which does the damage to a single character. You see here that we calculate our base damage, we loop through the damage stats, the defending stats, and then call apply damage. So with those minor little changes, we've now got abilities like AOEs that bomb or drop bombs like Karthus, and we've almost got the ability to create just about anything now. You can start putting these effects together and start to see how you can make some really awesome effects, some really awesome combat stuff. And I really want to see what it is you make too. I'm curious to see what kind of damage abilities and what kind of other cool spells and things you make. So experiment with it a lot. Come back in the next section. We're going to get into buffs and animations and some other really interesting things as well.